Since the involvement of NASCAR superstars Dale Earnhardt Jr., Kevin Harvick, Jeff Burton, and Justin Marks, the notoriety of the Cars Tour and its competitors has skyrocketed. The racing speaks for itself because it's true, grassroots, hard-nosed late model racing at its best. And we're here to bring that action to light. This is On Tour. Welcome to the #1 rated show on this YouTube channel. My name is Buddy Pulley, joined, of course, by FrontStretch.com's lead Cars Tour reporter, Chase Folsom, or as we know him on this channel as Chuck. This is On Tour, episode 3, following the Cars Tour race at Hickory. Their second race of the season. Wasn't supposed to be, but it is. Chuck, Hickory, man, what a great little racetrack.
Yeah, that is. So it wasn't the first racetrack I ever attended. That would be Rockingham, but it's the first one that I ever remember actually being at the race. Some of my favorite memories as a kid. My grandfather was working on Gray Galding's late model when they were sponsored by Krispy Kreme. And my other grandfather brought me to the racetrack. And we were watching the race, and they had a mid-race break. And my grandfather that was working in the pits ran across the track up to the fence, found a gap in the fence, and threw me a box of Krispy Kreme donuts through the fence. And me and my grandfather in the stands shared the donuts while we watched the late model race at Hickory that night. So it's my home track. I love going there. I'm glad that they made some much-needed upgrades to the facility this year. I'm excited to go back in July. Obviously, I missed it this week. But yeah, buddy.
Yeah, I mean that's a hell of a story. I love that. That's awesome. That is racing right there.
That is peak childhood memories. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. No, man, I've never been to Hickory. I'll be at the throwback race later on this year. But it's great little racetrack. It reminds me of Wilkesboro before they repaved it. You know, it's got great multi-groove racing. And it's just, it reminds you of it, when you think quintessential grassroots short track, Hickory fits that bill pretty good. And they also call it the birthplace of NASCAR stars. And I think that bill fits them pretty good too. He's got some pretty elite company. Obviously, Ned Jarrett, Dale Jarrett, they're born there. And then their list of track champions is a who's who of NASCAR. I mean, yeah. I'm looking at this list right now. Junior Johnson. Ralph Earnhardt won about 50 million of these damn things. Harry Gant, both the Huffmans, Robert and Landon, and even Shane, and they're not even related. And then Josh Berry, of course, who's a rookie in the Cup Series. They're all track champions there. The list goes on. Man.
Dennis Setzer off the top of my head is another one.
Huh?
I said Dennis Setzer off the top of my head. That's another one that won a title.
That's right. Did he win a truck championship?
I want to say yes, but don't hold me to.
He did too. We'll get the editing people to fact check that one. So I'll go fact check it. Anyway, obviously they used to hold Busch races and Cup races there. Busch races more recently. But yeah, let's check out the results from Hickory Motor Speedway.
Taking a look at the results from the ZMAX Cars Tour Tough Shed 250 at Hickory Motor Speedway, it was Connor Zilisch picking up his first career late model stock series win, followed by Brendan Butterbean Queen in second, and Chad McCumbee, leading the most laps on the night, would wind up third. Connor Hall would come home fourth, Minnie Tyrell would pick up a top 5, and Bobby McCarty would bring the number 6 home in 6th position. 2023 Hickory Track champion Cade Brown brought the number 23 home in 7th, with Ryan Millington in 8th, rookie Brent Cruz in 9th, and another rookie Trayton Lapsevich picking up his first top 10. Colorado's Cody Dempster would come home in 11th, with Jacob Hefner in 12th, pole sitter Landon Lewis down in 13th, Brandon Pierce in 14th, and hometown hero Landon Huffman in 15th. Josh Kosek would bring the number 57 home in 16th, with Bryce Applegate in 17th, Ronnie Bassett Jr. in 18th, Buddy Isles Jr. in 19th, and Katie Hettinger rounding out the top 20. RNS Race Cars Logan Clark would come home in 21st, with Jonathan Finley in 22nd, Deke McCaskill out of the race in 23rd, Mason Diaz filling in for Carson Kvapil would fall out of the race and finish 24th, and Andrew Grady in 25th. Connor Jones, after a nasty accident in turn 4, would come home 26th, Sam Butler in 27th, Cameron Bolin in 28th, and Gio Ruggiero in 29th. The only car not to qualify was Taylor Satterfield.
All right, so obviously you saw it there. The phenom, as I'm going to call him, I'm going to steal Larson's nickname. Connor Zilisch took the win over Butterbean and Chad McCumbee. Chad McCumbee was a big story of the race. Why is that?
Yeah, he didn't qualify on pole, but he qualified up front and led the most laps ultimately on the night, but he led a good portion of the first half of the race. And it has now surpassed 2 years since his one and only Cars Tour win in a late model stock car, which came at Hickory in 2022 in the spring race. So he's been searching for victory lane, and they've been really fast to start the year. Obviously, he was the pole sitter at Southern National, had some great speed there. Ultimately, mechanical failure took him out at the end. Again, really good speed at Hickory. If they keep running this fast, he mentioned it, they're going to find their way to victory lane, and he can be a title contender if this is the speed they're going to bring to the racetrack all year long. So it'll be interesting to see if they can keep that up. He's a good story to follow. He's a great guy. I hope he can keep it up and keep competing up there at the front, because it's always good when the Aaron's number 16 is fighting at the front of a Cars Tour field.
Yeah, and we've already seen this year, not in Cars Tour, but last week we saw Caden Honeycutt break a nearly 2-year-long winless streak, so maybe Chad can be the next one there. Obviously, Chad's claim to fame in my eyes is his role in the ESPN movie 3. So maybe he can change that and get him a win this year. Like you said, ultimately dominated the open portion of this race, but would end up coming up short of the victory, and here's maybe why.
We had some crazy issues going on the first half of the race. We had no radio communication, and we finally got it alleviated. And I think maybe it was just we found a radio that I could hear them on about halfway through, but prior to that, it kind of changed my game plan. Like I can manage without a spotter, but it was way easier to lead the race and manage that than try to get back in traffic. So I ran a little harder than I wanted to run the first 50, 60, 70 laps. I think that could have been the difference maker, to be honest with you, but at the end of the day, we just needed a little bit more drive at the end, needed a little more turn at the end. Had a little contact with Connor at one point and knocked the toe in or out or something. So, but I'm just glad we finished, man. We just need to finish some of these races, geez.
We heard Chad talk about some troubles he had before the comp yellow. Chuck, do me a favor, explain comp yellows and what they mean in the Cars Tour.
So the rule is, it's a gray rule that kind of varies. Ultimately, the lap count is just not the lap count of the race, but the lap count of the comp yellow is decided in the drivers' meeting every week, depending on, tire wear, how many tires they have for the race, whether it's a 4-tire or a 6-tire race. The lap count, like this week, they ran 150 instead of the normal 125. All that varies in. But if they run a consecutive number of green flag laps, it usually ranges from 40 to 50 is where they pick the number. It's either 40, 45, or 50. If they run, I believe it was 50 this week. Don't hold me to that. I haven't watched the full thing back yet. If they run that number of laps under green, they throw a competition yellow. This rule goes out the window once the yellow would fall inside 15 laps to go. So, there's no late race restarts that they're trying to drum up on purpose. It's just to keep the field from getting too spread out throughout the middle portion of the race. It's kind of like a fun flag. It's kind of like a way cooler version of a caution clock, I guess, if you want to put it like that. It works really well for what the series is trying to do and the talents they're trying to showcase. It keeps the field bunched up, but at the end of the race, if a guy's pulling away, it's not going to hurt him because they're not going to throw that yellow inside 15 laps. So I think it's the best way they could go about the rule with comp yellows. And like I said, it'll probably be shorter than that this week with the tire wear we're going to see at New River, and we'll get to that.
Now, speaking of comp yellows, it was after the final one that Connor Zilisch took the lead from Chad McCumbee and would never look back. He was in a fierce battle with Butterbean there for a little bit, but ultimately took home the win.
It's tough at Hickory, you know, when you qualify outside the top 10 like that, it ain't easy to get back to the front. And, you know, my Pinnacle Racing Group team and everyone a part of it, Chevrolet, we had a really fast car that made me probably look better than I am, but, you know, it made my job easy out there. You know, they kept telling me to stay patient and disciplined, and I felt like I was, but that's just how fast our car was. They didn't believe me. So it feels really good to get a win in the Cars Tour in the late model stock division. I've won in the Pro Lates before, but this one's definitely special. This division is so competitive, and it means a lot to win. Saw a lot of guys struggling to kind of hold the bottom coming off the corners. A lot of guys free on exit, and we were really tight in qualifying, which kind of led me to believe we were going to be good in the race, and it was true for sure. So I'm just glad that, you know, it paid off. You know, I stayed disciplined throughout practice, and, you know, I've had loose cars here before, and it's not fun. So, you know, you just got to know what you want out of the cars, and, you know, I had a really fast Chevrolet today. So, you know, just glad that, you know, I was able to get the job done and finally win one of these.
Obviously, Connor's still just having himself a year. I mean, Rolex 24 winner, Sebring winner. He won the truck pole and got him a top 5 in his first National Series start in NASCAR. And I would imagine this is probably his biggest win, clearly. A car store win at Hickory, getting his first one. Man, Trackhouse saw something in that kid. And, you know, that's saying something, because when you look at a guy like Connor, he's such a young kid. He's accomplished so much in Trans Am, but you have a Xfinity champion in Daniel Suarez. You have a 4-time Cup winner and the Melon Man, the Hail Melon himself, Ross Chastain. And, I mean, do I even need to introduce him, Shane Van Gisbergen? That's some pretty elite company that, you know, you're...
Truck champion, Zane Smith.
Yeah, truck champion, Zane Smith, thank you. That's pretty elite company that you're running with, and that's got to add a whole lot of pressure. So, I mean, that'll be fun to watch for him, how he handles the pressure versus the opportunity he's been given.
Yeah, he's, like you said, he's obviously extremely talented. And he had a previous Cars Tour win in the Pro Late Model last year Ace. This is his first late model stock win. It's just fun to see him get behind the wheel of a race car, and he's so humble about it too. He gets out and he's like, "Yeah, we had a great car." And, like, he's everything you want in an up and coming race car driver. He's got talent, he's got class. There's not really anything to critique about him, and he was one of the only cars that could drive around the outside. He held off Butterbean, who is, while he has admitted Hickory's probably his worst track on the schedule, that's still the guy that ran 4 points away from winning the championship last year in this very series. And Connor's not even full-time. You talked about it. He's going from NASCAR to ARCA to Trans Am, IMSA, whatever he wants to run, whatever he gets in, he runs up front in and he contends for wins. And that's the type of talent we talk about with Kyle Larson, Tony Stewart. I'm not putting him in this category yet, but AJ Foyt, Mario Andretti, that is an unteachable talent to get behind the wheel of anything and drive the wheels off of it and compete. So you're looking at the future of the sport for sure.
Yeah, it's a pathway that we are seeing come back around, the driving anything and everything you can get into, like the Foyts and the Andretti's used to. And it's good to see. But it's also good to see a guy like this run grassroots late model racing, you know, because that's what it's all about, right? This race did not go without a little bit of controversy. Connor Jones, in my eyes, it looked like he kind of just got dumped by Jacob Hefner there. Tough break for him. Obviously, we're thinking about Connor. He took a pretty hard lick there, but he was none too pleased with Jacob. He ran down there and let him know, and so we'll hopefully Connor's back in the car this week at New River. Frontstretch.com is where you'll find all your racing content in one place for free. They have it all from NASCAR to F1 to IndyCar, grassroots racing, and even iRacing. Front Stretch has you covered with daily news for every series, weekly columns, and even on-site coverage at every NASCAR and Cars Tour event. Head over to frontstretch.com, subscribe to their YouTube page, and give them a follow on X to get your daily fix on all things motorsports. Now, Chuck, obviously you weren't in Hickory covering the Cars Tour. You were covering the NASCAR triple header at Martinsville. So, of course, we got to highlight Carson Kvapil's top 5 run. How about that, man?
Yeah, that was something to watch. Standing in the infield at Martinsville, as the laps wound down, watching him contend at the front was a very cool sight to see for me personally. Talk to him a lot at Cars Tour events because he wins a lot. So I have to talk to him a lot. Don't have a choice, but he's always a joy to talk to. He's such a nice guy. And I'm just going to give you guys a little stat. Out of all the guys that have ever made their first career NASCAR Xfinity Series start in a JRM car, this list includes William Byron, Josh Berry, Chase Elliott. It goes on. Only one of them has ever finished top 5 in their debut, Carson Kvapil. So with that goes without saying he had an outstanding night. And
Pretty
of
elite
course,
company.
yeah, pretty well. When you're by yourself, it's very elite company. So of course, with that, we had to catch up with him post race.
Maximizing is to go out there and get a win to me. I mean, I know this '88 team, this Chevrolet Camaro, it's capable of winning. So the end goal and really the expectation for me is to go out and win. So coming up with a fourth it's obviously not bad, right? Like, I'm pretty excited, but I felt like we had a car that was capable of at least running top 3 and maybe going for the win.
That was my good buddy Trey Lyle, who caught up with him after his 4th place finish at Martinsville. Shout out to him. Shout out to my buddy Trenton Worsham that got all the videos at Hickory for me this weekend. I got some other stuff at Martinsville. If you want to go check out any of those or any of the full interviews that you've seen on this show, go to frontstretch.com or frontstretch.com's YouTube page. You'll find all the content there. All the written content is also on frontstretch.com. Moving on. Yeah, Carson absolutely turned some heads Saturday night. If you didn't know who Carson Kvapil was before, you do now. I would be shocked if he's not back in an Xfinity car by this summer. From what I'm hearing, nothing's official yet, but he should be. Should be. I have a certain race this summer in June that I have circled as the potential next time we'll see him. So be on the lookout for that.
Don't
Travis
hold out
dad.
on us. What?
I have my own thoughts. Travis's dad dropped.
They would be
Loudon is my guess.
Loudon. Okay. Travis's dad? You mean Travis?
No, Travis, his dad, Carson's dad, dropped some hints that he should be back in an Xfinity car this summer. So I'm crossing my fingers that it doesn't interfere with the Cars Tour stuff, because if I'm doing my math correctly, he's not that far behind the points lead in cars still, and he can still win the championship, and it's going to be really fun to watch that. And I want that to happen. I want that battle to happen between him and Connor Hall again, like it did in 2022. So yeah, don't want to run on, but shout out to Carson. I also did catch up with him pre-race, so if you look out for that interview to drop on Front Stretch later this week in Short Track Weekly.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, it's so good to see what Junior's doing, obviously, with Bubba Pollard. He finished 6th last week, and now another great story with Carson finishing 4th this week. Dale mentioned after the race just how, despite popular belief, it's hard to put a 5th car out there, even for Dale Jr. You're working with extra guys. Obviously, he had a couple rough pit stops there. Those guys aren't broken in exactly. But he stresses to his entire company how important it is to put these guys in the cars, and for the sole sake that it's good for the sport. And it just shows how passionate Dale is, and speaks to, Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s character, and just how much he cares about not only grassroots racing, but just the entire sport of stock car racing. And if you heard those comments, it does nothing but warm your heart. And, it makes me so happy to see these guys like Bubba and Carson, and you can only cheer for them.
Yeah, I mean, even Connor Zilisch is going to be in his Xfinity cars later this year in that number 88 car. That's another example. There is no one in the sport like Dale Earnhardt Jr., and there's no one that's had as big of an impact specifically on grassroots racing as Dale Earnhardt Jr. I mean, from his team's pipeline of drivers, go back to Josh Berry. Obviously, without the team, Josh Berry isn't where he is today. North Wilkesboro, without Dale Jr., North Wilkesboro is still sitting dormant in Wilkes County with grass and trees growing through it. The Cars Tour, he bought into that with Harvick and Burton and Marks, and they're helping blossom that series into a really big thing that's just going to continue to grow and get more publicity. So the list goes on and on what Dale has done for the regional racing scene. And it's the core of the sport. That is what the people at the top may not see, that still turns the wheels of stock car racing and helps it go around, because without your regional drivers and tracks and series, the guys at the top wouldn't have a foundation to fall back on. So shout out to Dale for everything he's doing for short track racing, and I just hope it continues to grow. Haven't gotten to the bottom of that one yet. He fell out about around mid race. I've seen it. I haven't listened to the audio, so still trying to. I was watching it at work today, but there was a lot of sparks coming out from under that car. So I'm guessing some sort of chassis failure, if I had to guess, not an engine failure or something like that. So that really sucks for Mason, because he's a great talent too. And he had driven through the field. He was inside the top 10 when this happened. So he was making the most of his opportunity. Unfortunately, just wasn't meant to be. But Junior Motorsports didn't let that slow him down. They announced plenty more late model news this week between what's going on this week and weeks following. You got the sun drop there.
I was
Buddy,
trying to do a big
those
reveal.
announcements?
I was trying to do a big reveal, but I had already opened it. I couldn't keep my lips off this ice cold sun drop.
So yeah, for those that haven't heard, Dale Earnhardt Jr. is back in a late model at New River All American Speedway this weekend in the Bass Pro Shops car. He'll run the Cars Tour race with us in Jacksonville Saturday night. And then it was announced a few days later that Sundrop will be back on his car for the Cars Tour race at Florence on Labor Day weekend, when they join up with NASCAR down there with the Southern 500. And Sammy Smith will drive the number 88 late model at North Wilkesboro during All-Star Week in the Cherry Lemon Sundrop car. And my Lord, that car is beautiful. Cannot wait to see that one in person. Not that the OG Sundrop car isn't awesome, because it is. But both the cars look spectacular. Dale's Bass Pro car looks spectacular. You're gonna have to pay attention, because him and Carson are gonna look identical this week.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
Yeah, but, they couldn't change it up a little bit for us. They did that at Florence too, actually, for the icebreaker. So for those wondering how Dale's going to do, I would say pretty good, because if you're not familiar with New River, it's basically Florence. It's basically Myrtle Beach. It's Florence at the beach. It's not very far from the Atlantic Ocean at all. So it gets sandblasted year round. The asphalt's 25 years old, so it chews tires like a cheese grater. And that's right in Dale's wheelhouse. You know, he likes those tire wear tracks where you have to take care of your equipment. So I am predicting a top 10 run out of Dale, if not better. We will see. But yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. Glad to have Dale at any late model race, obviously.
I'm just glad to have Sundrop on a race car, because Sundrop is delicious. Now, before we get out of here, Chuck's making me nervous. He's got a question for me, so this is going to be a new segment. Chuck's question of the week. We'll come up with something cooler by next week's episode. But Chuck, what you got for me?
Yeah, so this is going to be my segment where I get to blindside Buddy with a grassroots racing question. So, Buddy, this week's question is 12 years old too young for a kid to be in a late model?
Oh, dang. It's funny you bring this up. That's a good question. I was thinking about this a couple weeks ago. I was listening to I think it was DBC, and they were talking about Zilisch and how young he is racing in NASCAR, and talking about the age limit you should be in to get into a full body stock car, and how there's a gap there between like a Legends car and a late model, and it's tough because there is that gap there, and I would imagine you don't just run Legends car. I don't know when you can get a Legend car, 8 years old, something like that. And that's a pretty large gap between that, and I feel like the appropriate age in my eyes is maybe 14. I feel like you can get your learner's permit at that age. I feel like that's, learner's permit, driving a race car is the same thing. There's the same danger, it seems like, out there on the road. But I think it's tough. You're stuck between a rock and hard place. So you're just gonna run late or Legends for however long, or I don't know, man. That's tough.
So the reason I asked,
there's not a huge difference between 12 and 14, but there's something.
But like there is though, because that's like a lot happens in those 2 years, maturity wise, and developmental wise of the body and the brain. This was brought up because I think it was about a month ago, there was a post going around of a 12-year-old that was running a super late model on dirt in Tennessee. That is outrageous, in my opinion.
Wasn't there a 12-year-old running a late model stock last year?
So that's what I'm getting into is this came up today in our front stretch group chat because Greg Van Alst was posting that his 12-year-old son is running a late model this weekend at Anderson. And people were giving him crap for it. And he was like, well, I don't really care what your opinion is. And I see both sides of it. We're like, the health-wise, like there could be a lot of dangers should whatever kid get into an accident, because even if they're the greatest race car driver in the world, you're not prone to others' mistakes. But at the same time, if the kid can hang, then the kid can hang. And that's very evident because Tristan McKee won a pro late model race in the Cars Tour last year at 12 years old. And he made late model stock car starts. So, like, obviously he's got driver talent at 12 years old, but you still have the ethical question of, is it right? I lean towards no. I lean towards probably 14, like you say.
I think it could be.
That's an age. That's at a very important age where, like I said, some maturity things happen. So
I think it could be a case by case basis. Honestly, I think they should put a hard, like, if you're 14, you're eligible to run, but there should be maybe there's some sort of testing or something that you got to go through to get put in before that. So I think that's probably where I like, because you do have those exceptions to the rule like you just mentioned. So yeah, I don't know. That was a good question. Yeah,
I'll try to back it up next week.
Yeah. But other than that, that's all we got for this week. We do have a little bit of pure sound. Obviously, we weren't at the Cars Tour race, but we have a little bit of pure sound from Carson Kvapil at Martinsville.